and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. We got a great show for you tonight. But before we start, I'd love to tell you about one of our sponsors, Swiss America. Our country is facing so many problems these days under Joe Biden. The last thing any of us need is more to worry about. Unfortunately, we now have to fear losing our freedom and privacy with the Democrats' new push for a digital dollar that could allow the government to tell us what we can and cannot buy with our own hard-earned money. That's why I'm encouraging every one of you tuning into the show right now to get The Secret War on Cash, an insightful report created by my friends at Swiss America. With this report, you'll learn how to protect yourself from the threats facing our freedom and your hard-earned money. The report is available right now to my listeners free of charge. Just go to www.swissamerica.com/Trump to register immediately. Tonight, we're joined by PragerU personality Xaviaer Durousseau, as well as Landon Starbuck, whose new documentary, The War on Children, premieres February 2nd, coming up very soon on X. Isn't that Groundhog Day, Landon? Am I wrong on that?
I believe it is, but, the more of things we unearth, it kind of fits. So
yeah, well, it feels like Groundhog Day a lot, because I feel like no matter what, the folks on the left are just obsessed with doing the same things over and over again, although they're not working, of course, for our country. A little bit of news over the weekend. Obviously, today is the day in New Hampshire. The polls are now officially closed, but hopefully we're going to see a big result for Donald Trump soon. But Donald Trump's, I think, maybe most formidable opponent in terms of how the media presented it, Ron DeSantis, governor, my state of Florida, dropped out of the race and obviously endorsed my father-in-law over the weekend. Xavier, I'm going to start with you. I feel like this is a good thing. We want to unite. We want to come together as a party. We want to all get our resources together and take it to the woke left, because we can't deal with any more of what we've seen over the past 3 years. What did you think of this?
I 100% agree. I'm glad that Ron DeSantis was able to put his ego to the side, humble himself, because, it hasn't been the cleanest interactions between him and President Trump. But now it is time to all get behind President Trump and make sure that we get this big W that we desperately need in 2024. America is in shambles right now, and we need someone who is fearlessly going to take the charge the same way that President Trump did in 2016, the same way he deserved to do in 2020. I'm very excited to see him take this win in 2024. And I just want the right to stop infighting so much. Like, yes, we need to hold each other accountable. Yes, we need to, have some checks and balances. But I feel like online right now, this Twitter culture is getting a bit too hostile. And I'm just glad that when it comes to the big key players with Vivek and Ron DeSantis, they are doing the right thing by standing behind President Trump.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot in the past, week, Landon. A lot of people endorsing him. Obviously, Tim Scott as well, I think on Friday, endorsed him. Vivek, by the way, whenever you see this crew of people coming at you, imagine that whole slate of characters. Imagine Donald Trump, Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis. Imagine them all on a stage together. I don't even know, how is the left going to fight against that? And I love to see it. I love us coming together. Look, this is something that I think the Democrats often do well, which is that no matter what their little differences might be, they all kind of galvanize support around one another, or some sort of, some of their woke ideology, of course, as we know they love to do. But I'm glad to see it on the right. I think we need to see more of that.
I totally agree. And now is not the time for minutia. If we really understand what time it is in America, that our country is on the verge of collapsing, if we understand what's happening to this next generation of children, then we understand that there's no time for minutia or infighting or having conversations that are not in line with our priorities. And our priorities are leading through strength. We're going on offense. We are so tired of losing and the pettiness, the weakness, the meekness. It is time to shovel that to the side and put forth Trump as our new leader in this next battle, because we have, frankly, this is the last chance we have to save this next generation.
It really is. And I'm curious about, Landon, your documentary. Just give us a quick preview of it, because, I mean, there's a lot that I want to talk about today as it relates to kids, education. I mean, everything that I feel like we're doing right now, at least for me as a mom and for me as an American, look, it's about the next generation and generations beyond, and really saving this country for them and saving them at a certain point. Tell us about the documentary real quick.
Absolutely. Well, my husband, Robbie Starbuck, and I have put this documentary together, and we're really excited to show and expose the war on children. That is called The War on Children, to expose the left's assault for this next generation. Up until now, there hasn't been a documentary with this high production quality as well that has shown all of the different tentacles of the ways that these attacks are being enacted out onto our kids. And so this connects all the dots for people. It is going to blow people's minds and wake people up. I mean, we've exposed leftists on camera. We interviewed drag queens and asked them about the sexually explicit performances, asked them to denounce them. We went on offense in this documentary. And for people who don't understand what's going on, or their censorship has made it difficult for them to see what's going on, this film is going to be undeniable. And we're so happy that we can get it on X, because we know that people are going to see it and we're not going to be censored.
Good for you guys. Thank you for doing it. I mean, Xavier, it really is a huge problem. I'll tell you, part of the reason that Eric and I decided to move our family to Florida is because we wanted to know that when our kids are going to school, and they go to school 5 days a week, that they are not being indoctrinated with, all of this crazy stuff. You look at where the education is here in America. You look at how far behind so many of our kids fell during COVID, where we fall in line with other, highly developed nations around the world. Man, we're falling to the back of the pack. It's sort of embarrassing now. And I think about, well, what's going to happen to these kids whenever they're out on their own? They're not going to have a puppy and a safe space, and it's not going to be coddled like it was in school. You gotta teach these kids. You have to educate them. They have to learn the basics at least. And we know they're not even getting up to the general age requirement and grade requirements, and meeting those basic standards in a lot of cases. So I think a lot of people out there are like, can these teachers please just teach? Well, not if you are a woke Seattle teacher. He's a social studies teacher. His name is Ian Golash. He provided students, apparently, Xavier, with a social identity wheel, he called it, worksheet, and asked these 10th graders to reflect on things like their race, their ethnicity, their gender, and sexual orientation, which I don't know why we're asking 10th graders to reflect on sexual orientation specifically, but okay. So one of these students turned the worksheet back in, and labeled himself in this little box as straight, I guess, under the sexual orientation. This teacher, I guess, berated him at school and told him that it was offensive to label yourself as straight, because it, of course, implies, Xavier, that LGBT people are crooked. How ridiculous a thing to hear from a teacher of a social studies class.
Our educational system is so embarrassing at this point, because I mean, these people are worried about everything besides literacy rates.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about dismantling anything, like they want to talk about dismantling whiteness and be offended by being by identifying as straight, at this point, people need to be offended more. People need to be just thrown off from this normalization that we have, that every single thing is triggering you. To say that being straight is an offensive thing just shows how far gone our country is. And right now, we're already starting to see some of the effects of this woke ideology. I call it the school to prison pipeline, where these kids aren't getting the resources they need. They're not getting the guidance they need. They're not being instilled with values. So instead, they're going straight from school to the prison culture. And that's why I'm so happy we have things like PragerU Kids. PragerU Kids is over in Florida now, where we are making sure that teachers at least have the resources to show to students where they can get fundamental education, they can get values, and they can learn to love this country again and have an ideal future again. Because kids these days can't even read can't even read a clock. So I don't understand how we expect these kids to be successful when they are so far gone from what the benchmark used to be.
Yeah, I mean, embarrassing is the best word, but also frightening. Because Landon, like Xavier's saying, what is the option for these kids when they get out of school? It's a pipeline to prison because you have no skills, you have no ability to support yourself, you haven't been taught anything useful in schools. And what do we expect to happen to these kids? And in some ways, I often think about it and I'm like, well, maybe this is all part of a bigger plan that the left has. Maybe this is how you keep people under your thumb, because, we know you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach a man to fish, he eats forever. We all know that old adage, but it really is true. And it sort of bears itself out when you look at what's going on with our education, when you look at the failure of our educational system, and it seems purposeful. In so many respects, I can't look at things like this and say, like, this is a great idea. Oh, wow. You have to look at it and say somebody somewhere is directing this and saying, don't teach our kids to read. Don't teach our kids to do math. Don't teach our kids anything that would be useful for them. Teach them this nonsense. I have to think it's on purpose to some effect.
It 100% is. And we go into this so much in the War on Children documentary. So what's happening with kids in schools, what are now indoctrination centers, is that they separate them by oppressor and victim. This is about attacking their identity. If they can dismantle their sense of identity, which was once about their faith and their family and who they are as a character-driven person, then they can destroy that child. They can insert whatever ideology into that child they can. They can convince them that they're not born in the right body. They can convince them that there's no difference between a boy or a girl. They seek to degenderize and change the language. So these are then compliant, government-dependent children that will not question and learn to critically think and question anything.
Yeah, it is so frightening to see. And Xavier, you were just talking about something that I wanted to bring up. In a Milwaukee public school, I guess abroad, Milwaukee public schools issued a memo to their staff instructing them to decenter whiteness in the classroom and giving them best practices on how to dismantle whiteness in the classroom. Here's what it says in the memo. Whiteness is everywhere around us. Educational practices have been rooted in whiteness and coming from a lens of whiteness for years. Educators should reflect on which elements of whiteness they see in education, which they participate in, and which elements they can work to dismantle. Showing Up for Racial Justice, I guess this is some website or something, created a list of elements of whiteness that can be used for reflection. Oftentimes, policies, practices, systems, etc., coming from the sole lens of whiteness are taken as the norm instead of engaging in those multiple perspectives. What the heck are we talking about here? How is this good for anybody? They're so upset. What is the obsession with race? I don't understand this. Am I wrong on the idea that we should just be treating every single student the exact same way, not based on how they look, not be talking about race all the time? There seems to be such an obsession with it. This is not good for anyone as far as I can see.
I feel like obsession is an understatement. I mean, these people are just so fascinated by the idea of dividing these kids by race and making these kids be instilled with inherent racism. Because whiteness, what does that even mean? Like, I feel like we can't even brush over the fact that what is the definition of whiteness? Just a Caucasian person existing? That is insane to me. You know, I look at things like critical race theory, and I just call it criticizing white people theory, where you demonize these people who are minding their business. And what is that? That has no benefit to people of color either. What benefit does it tell a young black student? Hey, look at these white people over here. Everything that's wrong in your life is because of them. That is just a that is so far from reality, and it just puts the focus on the most irrelevant issues where these kids can't even think critically anymore. And like Landon was saying, I think that's very intentional. I think they want these kids to have no way of thinking for themselves, no ability to do research or even to really read the facts if you put it in front of them. So it's all a conscious effort to point over to this evil, invisible boogeyman that does not actually exist called systemic racism. It's all a plot from day one.
I mean, it feels like the Democrats are pretty well aware, especially right now with Joe Biden as their candidate, that their support among at least young Black Americans is really dipping. Because the truth is, you can really only fool people for so long. You can really only lie to people for so long before people look around and they're like, something is wrong here. Things are not working as well as they were for me before. What is different? Actually, Biden campaign co-chair, South Carolina Congressman James Clyburn, was asked on GMA last week if he was concerned because I guess Joe Biden's support has dipped down to around 32% with young Black voters. So this is for people under 50 years old. Here's his response to when he was asked about, well, is there some concern? He said, I don't know where those numbers are coming from. Well, I don't know. Have you gone and talked to anybody? When someone is basing their opinion on incomplete information or misinformation, and the other side, he says, is good at misinformation, there are a lot of things being said that are just not true. I'd love for him to come on out, Landon, and say what is not true. What is it that he feels that our side, I guess he's pointing to? He's saying we're great at misinformation. What is it? You don't have to even do much these days for people to look around and understand your gas is expensive. Your groceries are expensive. People are having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Life is not going in the right direction for people. And you talk to anybody out there in any state, and they will all tell you that things feel like they are headed in the wrong direction. I suspect that the Democrats are in a bit of a panic right now. What do you think?
Absolutely. And that's why they seek to use language as a mechanism to control people. So anything that disagrees with their narrative or their objectives is deemed hate speech or dangerous or misinformation. And then, of course, the big tech, puppets just continue to parrot these little, warning signs and telling any opinion that disagrees with theirs that they are dangerous or, hate speech or any of these things. I mean, they're literally trying to change legislation to make it illegal to call a woman or a man a man. So, I mean, that's really the path that they're headed down is the ministry of truth, where they get to determine what that truth is. And that is extremely dangerous.
Yeah. Xavier, what do you think? Why is it really does feel like there is a huge drop in support overall, obviously, for Joe Biden. And again, I say this all the time. I would be utterly shocked if Joe Biden is the candidate for whom people on the left will be able to vote on November 5th of this year. I don't see Joe Biden staying in long term. I think the alarm bells are going off on the left. But what's the story with the Black support? Because it is really dipping for Joe Biden right now. And obviously, I just have to assume it's because people are smart enough to look around and say, like, hey, this guy is not doing things that are making my life better. It's actually making things worse. But what do you think?
In the Black community, we have an expression that goes, don't be playing in my face. And in other words, that means don't insult my intelligence. And for far too long, the left has gotten away with directly lying in the face of Black people and convincing us all these different things are true and that the economy is doing great and that unemployment is dropping and all these different opportunities are resurging. But the thing is Black people aren't seeing any of this be an actual reality. And one of the big things to point out, especially when it comes to the young Black vote, is that the left for a long time has weaponized social media as a way to get us to all be on their side, think the way that they want us to think. But that same weapon is now being the epitome of their downfall. Because of social media, Black people online are starting to talk to each other and actually have conversations outside of what we're just being spoon-fed and saying, oh, wait, none of this is making sense. And you look in the comment sections on anything, like if you go on the Shade Room where a lot of Black people get their news and information from.
The comments are so great there. I love to go to that comment section. Forget it.
I love that comment section because that's where you really see a good pulse of the culture. And they are dragging Joe Biden and humiliating him because everybody knows that he is a joke. And more Black people are beginning to support President Trump. And I think a lot did in the first place, but they were told not to. We were told that if you're Black, you have to be a Democrat. But as time goes on, we're waking up more as a community, and we're putting our foot down. We're done being lied to, and we're done having people play in our face.
I actually think there's some really weird shift that's going on. I don't want to say weird because look, I've been on this side of the aisle for a long time. Xavier, you once were not, right? I remember you and I've talked before, and you basically like red pilled yourself. You started going down this rabbit hole, trying to debunk PragerU videos, right? And you were like, oh my gosh, tell people quickly about your story. I suspect it's happening to a lot of people. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that in 2024, people are now realizing that like the cool thing to do isn't to just go along with whatever nonsense all of these people on the left are spoon feeding you, as you say. I think people are like, oh no, I'm going to go rogue. I'm going to go vote for the conservatives. I'm going to go vote for the GOP candidates. But tell people really quickly, Xavier, your story, because I love it.
Yes, of course. I was a lifelong liberal. My parents are leftists, and I was actually cast to be on a Netflix reality show as a BLM activist, teaching people how to be a BLM activist. So I decided to start studying the counter arguments to make sure that I was ready to debate anybody. And I found PragerU videos, and I was going to make an entire series debunking PragerU videos, but I ended up dismantling all the narratives that I was indoctrinated with instead. I started exposing the lies of Black Lives Matter. I started realizing that the Democrats from day one have been set out for the demise of Black people. And the more information I started to uncover, it's like once you see the truth in one area, you start to see the truth everywhere. And I'm so happy that I walked away from the left and from that liberal mentality. And there are so many Black people who are following that exact same path. And I think you're going to hear a lot more stories like mine coming this year.
It's so great. It's so cool to see. And it's funny because once you actually have that real information, Landon, I hear stories like this all the time. It's funny because it never seems to go the other way, though. Like, when have you ever heard of somebody like going on, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole on MSNBC. Let me just take a look at what these people are talking about. Wait a minute. I just decided I'm a Democrat. I haven't heard it going in that direction ever.
No, it doesn't go in that direction. You're right. I think that's what's amazing about social media and new media, especially with more creatives and content creation happening. I mean, PragerU is the best example I can think of, especially for this next generation of young minds. If we don't have the alternative and it's not polished and it's not presented in a clear, concise 5-minute, summary, then we are not doing our job to make sure that we have an open arm place for people to go. Because when they wake up and they stare at that MSNBC screen and they realize they've been lied to, they are going to be looking for answers. I'm so glad that there's PragerU and documentaries like ours coming up that are going to help people understand what's happened for the past, decades that they've been asleep.
Yeah, we've got to wake everybody up. We got to win this one. We've got to get this country back on track. There's a big illegal immigration problem, in case no one has paid attention. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, but we're going to talk about a Denver hospital at a critical point and why illegal immigrants have overwhelmed that healthcare system. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Now, I hate to interrupt the show, but if you know anything about me, and I hope you do, I take my health very seriously. In fact, with each year that passes, of course, the goal of staying in my healthiest and best shape takes on more and more importance in my life. Feeling good is something that I do not take for granted because it's become an essential goal for me every single day. That means there are specific things that I do to make sure I'm feeling my absolute best. Of course, one of those is always remembering to take Balance of Nature supplements. So how did I choose Balance of Nature? There's so many products out there. It's nearly impossible to know that you've made the right choice. With Balance of Nature, I know that everything I take is made from whole food ingredients, just the way it should be. So if getting more serious about your health is something you've been wanting to commit to, I highly recommend you check out Balance of Nature. You can order them directly at www.balanceofnature.com and use promo code LARA. That's promo code LARA to get 35% off of your order. All right, so the immigration problem in this country is obvious. We've seen millions and millions of people pouring over the southern border. We don't know who they are. We know that they are going all over this country. We know they're going to a lot of sanctuary cities, Xavier. We know that these are cities that said, we'll take you in. There will be no negative repercussions. We'll take care of you. One of those cities is Denver. And Denver's public health care system spent $135 million in uncompensated care, meaning they didn't get any money back for that last year alone. That is a $10 million increase in just 1 year. And the reason that they give for this happening is because they have had a huge influx, 37,000 to be exact, plus illegal immigrants staying in Denver. It is, like I said, a sanctuary city. This woman who represents the hospital said that they are at a critical point because our costs exceed our revenues. We are turning down patients every day, particularly in the area of mental health and substance abuse. Those are two areas where, I mean, you think about what that means for an entire city. You think about how bad it is to have to turn away people who really are having a substance abuse problem and are seeking help, having a mental health issue and are seeking help. This is going to be, and people say all the time, what's the problem? Why can't we let everyone in? Because our systems cannot handle it. Here is an example in the city of Denver as to what happens when you overwhelm a system like the hospitals there.
You know, it's heartbreaking to hear that there's so many people being turned down in care, but it's like, how can you be surprised when you let all of these criminals who literally broke into our country to come over here and consume all of our resources, more often than not, completely for free? How can you be shocked that there is nothing left for you, that there's no care left for you, and that no one has time for you because we're so busy trying to help everybody else? It's like you have to put your life jacket on first before you go out and try to save everyone. We have a legal process for people to come into this country so that there is just a gauge on the influx, but instead we have an insane amount of people crossing our border every single month, and it's like nobody wants to do anything about it, especially the left, because I believe that this is the left's way of boosting up their numbers because, you know, they don't like voter ID. They want to just let any and everybody come over here and vote, and the side that is welcoming them in by the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, that's of course the side that they're going to vote for. And now the people of Denver are seeing the repercussions of that because they can't even get the care that they desperately need, and especially the substance abuse and the mental health crisis that they have out there. Their streets are just completely unsafe at this point because there's maniacs running around who aren't getting help because they're actually U.S. citizens, so they're the bottom of the priority list.
Yeah, well, and this is true. You actually look at some of these communities where people have been waiting in line for, you know, a decade or so for affordable housing. And what are you seeing happen? You're seeing these illegal immigrants, as you just said, Xavier, who do not pay into our system, who are not part of our collective and are not paying taxes. They're not doing anything. They're actually being bumped up to the front of the line in these affordable housing situations. And it's not right. You have actual American citizens who have done things the right way, who have waited and filled out, you know, all the applications, gone through the process. But this is pretty standard for what we've seen when it comes to illegal immigrants. I think it was a week ago, I saw that they had a sign at some TSA checkpoint that said, if you're an illegal immigrant and you don't have ID, Landon, don't worry about it. You could just go right through. How in the hell is it that we live in 2024 in the United States of America? And if you have come here and broken our laws to do so, it seems like you have more rights than actual American citizens. I don't know what's going on. I think this is going to be a huge problem for the Democrats this election cycle. If you look at Iowa and you look at the latest polling from New Hampshire, this is the #1 issue for many voters in the Iowa caucuses and in the New Hampshire primary. It's illegal immigration. The Democrats have let every single American citizen down when it comes to this problem.
100%. And my nonprofit, which combats child exploitation, went down to the border 2 years ago. And we were seeing what's now being exposed with people coming through, nobody asking for ID, children in soiled diapers with no shoes on, being transported through these airports. And what we now know was human trafficking operations. We now know that the Biden administration has lost track of a third of these children. Unvetted sponsors these children are going to. So if we're looking at our most vulnerable groups in America, veterans and especially children, those systems of care for those children, especially ones who are at risk of trafficking, sexual abuse, and exploitation, those systems are inundated. And now they're prioritizing these unaccompanied minors and illegals to the desperate tune of placing them with unvetted sponsors. They're not doing background checks. It is an absolute mess. So the idea that we're going to bring in even more of these people, even more of these children, and letting them in and putting them into our overwhelmed systems is a disgrace, and it's immoral.
It totally is. Here are the 10 largest sanctuary cities in America. None of these will surprise anyone. New York City, complete disaster in New York City. Eric Adams he's at his wit's end. He doesn't know how to handle it. It is a train wreck in New York with the illegal immigrant problem. Los Angeles, also a disaster. Chicago, Philly, San Diego, San Jose, Columbus, San Francisco, no shock, Seattle, and Denver. If you live in any one of these locations, you have, without a doubt, seen the negative impact of illegal immigration in your city. I lived in New York City for 15 years, and I'll tell you something, I go back there and it is like a place I've never seen before. The crime is through the roof, but then you literally have people living like out on the street around one of these hotels that houses the illegal immigrants. You have schools that can't open because they are housing illegal immigrants. It is such a mess. And now the problem is, God willing, we get Donald Trump back in office. We know that we had all-time lows in border crossings when he was president, but someone is going to have to deal with this. And we know that Joe Biden's way of dealing with it is just let everybody in and keep the gates open. But it is really a disaster. And there's no doubt this will be a major reason that people vote Donald Trump back into office. And the irony, of course, is that it is the first thing he was criticized for when he announced he was running for president in 2015. Xavier, I bet whenever back in those days, man, you were probably like, this guy is terrible. That I'm sure all the liberal outlets you watched portrayed him as some sort of a racist who doesn't want people to, of course, immigrate to America, which is insane. He wants them to do it the legal way.
Yeah, it's funny when I look back to it. It was actually around 2018. So I got red pilled, I would say full blown in 2020, towards the end of 2020. But in 2018, I started asking questions about President Trump because some of the most kind-hearted, God-fearing, non-racist people I knew were such huge supporters of him. And I thought that was really interesting. And because of the conversations I had with them, I was more open to like, you know what, let me actually go and try to see if any of the things I hear about President Trump are true. And I would see these Facebook articles that I would click on them and they turned out to be satire, or they turned out to be just opinionated pieces. Never once was I able to find a single piece of evidence to point to President Trump being racist in the way that the media and social media tried to portray. So I started to like Trump a little bit before I became super, super woke with BLM. And I'm very grateful that I started to do that research ahead of time so that I wasn't too deep in the Kool-Aid when it came to President Trump specifically. He won me over because I was making money when he was in office.
See, well, that's it. I mean, you can't. There are no two ways about that. You can't trick people when it comes to that. They know when they've had more money in their pocket, when their 401k was a little higher, whatever it might be. And we know that everything woke ends up in disaster. Go woke, go broke. We know the old adage. It's an old adage at this point. Sports Illustrated, I don't know if they got the memo or not, Landon. Apparently, they had to recently lay off the magazine's entire staff. And, you kind of are like, why would you do that? Things weren't working out well. You didn't feel like people were subscribing at the same rate. You weren't making the same amount of money. Turns out, whenever you go back and look at what's been happening over at Sports Illustrated over the past couple of years, perhaps they didn't understand the audience. who is the audience? I mean, let's face it. People would subscribe to Sports Illustrated. Mostly men, mostly I think to get the one issue a year, the swimsuit issue, right? That was the big one. And then what did they do over at Sports Illustrated? They tried to get woke. They prioritized a lot of plus size models, trans models. They were using AI to write some of their articles. They got really embarrassed over doing something like that. And it didn't seem like it worked out for them. So they're cleaning shop. They're going to start all over. Do you think they can come back from this and be successful? If I'm not mistaken, I think Victoria's Secret ran into a similar issue and they fired the entire staff as well.
I don't know. I mean, we're talking about the same people. Imagine being at their, board meeting where they're saying, I think it was, the men who think they're women. So maybe it was the women with a penis that turned the large male demographic of buyers off. I don't know. I mean, this is what we're dealing with here, these same people. So I really don't have faith that those same people would be able to revive, that publication. But I guess we'll have to see.
It's so funny because Xavier, they try these things. Like Victoria's Secret was known for forever. That was like, if you wanted to see like the best bodies in the industry, was the Victoria's Secret fashion show. And then I think they stopped doing the fashion show and then they brought it back, but it wasn't quite the same caliber. The truth is, people want to see good looking women on a runway, on a magazine. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. And whenever you're targeting men, I don't know, putting people on the cover of the magazine who they're not going to find attractive is probably not your best bet. I was reading some of the comments because, like we're talking about, I love to go to a comment section. Somebody wrote, this is like trying to sell snowblowers in Miami. It was never going to work out for anybody.
Yeah, I really don't think that these organizations are gauging their own audience because, like you said, nobody wants to see that. When it comes to Sports Illustrated, it's like we want to see talent, we want to see health. And when it comes to a woman being on the cover, we want to see an actual woman. But now we're going to have trust issues every time we look at the magazine because we're like, is this actually a woman this time? And then you have Victoria's Secrets. It's like lingerie is supposed to be for, again, healthy bodies, not this parade of excessive cellulite. Because yes, feel beautiful in your own skin, but all that confidence is not going to stop your blood from clotting. So no, it's like no one wants to look like you being a plus size model wearing these clothes. When we look at these clothes or whatever it is that you're wanting to, like, you don't want to see morbidly obese people because that's not what you want to embody when you wear it. So I just don't understand where they thought that their logic was there. They thought that it was going to be a cash grab to be woke and have social justice. But yeah, you might have gotten some clicks for that one single issue, but it's a wrap for you going on because you've abandoned your core audience.
Well, yeah, I mean, talk to Bud Light. No one knows better than Bud Light about doing something like that. It's funny, though, because it feels like in all of these spaces, there is an attempt to just like shove things at the American people and force us to accept them or like them or approve of them when the vast majority of people are like, I don't know, this might not be for me. I just don't think that this looks good. And you can't trick my eyes because my eyes can still see. So I don't know what the play is, but it doesn't seem like it's been working out well for Sports Illustrated. Better luck to them. Just going to say, I think there are a lot of actual women who embody, again, Xavier, like you're saying, fitness and the kind of things that maybe are a healthier alternative that we can put on those covers, and maybe they can revive themselves. If they need any pointers, I'm happy to give them some nice ladies to grace the cover. This is something, just before we go, I really want to talk about it, mostly for my husband. Eric and I have an issue. I always try to watch like a series with him, right? And we start watching the series, and then lo and behold, I turn around 5 minutes into the first episode of the series. Eric's asleep, and I'm like, and then the next time I'm trying to watch part 2 the next night or something, next episode, he's like, I don't know what's going on here. We can never get into watching anything together. So all these couples out there who are watching these shows together, I have such envy of everything you're doing. It's not going to happen for me. I would love for it to, but God bless him. Eric Trump falls asleep in front of a TV all the time. Apparently, this is a bad thing, Landon. Apparently, even the smallest amount of ambient light, and I only say this because I know if Eric and I are in different locations, if I'm traveling and he's home or vice versa, I know he falls asleep and the TV's on until like 4 o'clock in the morning. Smallest amount of ambient light can increase your risk for obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and depression. So I just want to send it out there as a warning to all people. Let me ask you, Landon, how's it go with you and Robbie? Are you guys, is one of you sleeping with the TV on? What's going on?
I think this might be a male thing. That they fall asleep more easily with the TV on because they just can relax. But for at least for me as a woman, I'm like, I have to have my eye mask. I have to have my beauty sleep. I have a routine. I just I couldn't do that. So I think it's more of a male thing. But that's just my opinion on that.
I love that you said the eye mask because I get a lot of flack for wearing the eye mask. But let me tell you why, Xavier. I don't want to wear this eye mask. I don't think it looks great. It's not even that comfortable to wear. But what happens is my husband always, now when I put my phone down at night, I do a face down phone because you know why? I don't need any extra light. I'm trying to keep it low key. I'm trying to stay asleep as long as possible. My alarm will go off and it'll wake me up at whatever time I've set it. However, not my husband. God bless him. Phone is always up. It's lighting up all night. People are sending him stuff all night long. So I got to wear this ridiculous eye mask that he loves to make fun of me for. I have no other options. Xavier, is this a male thing? Are you falling asleep in front of the TV too?
You know what? I prefer to sleep in completely pitch dark rooms and I used to fall asleep right in front of the TV. And then I started to realize how much better my sleep was when I wasn't doing that. But it is hard because I have this talent. It's kind of a blessing and a curse. I can sleep at any occasion. Like on a plane, boom, the second my seatbelt is on, I am asleep. I can be standing outdoors in the middle of the sunniest day ever, and I can just close my eyes and fall asleep. So it is very easy, I think, for men to fall asleep. Sometimes I remember my dad growing up, he would be snoring before his head even hit the pillow. So I think it is a male thing. But yes, I've always been telling people to stop sleeping in bright rooms. It completely throws off your REM. And I didn't know that it was actually making people more obese, but it makes sense. I feel like everything in America makes us more obese.
That's probably accurate. I think it's because if you're not getting that like really deep sleep, then your cortisol levels go up or something, and you're more prone to eat like food that's not great for you then during your awake hours. There's some connection there, but all I'll say is I'm just going to leave this segment right here, and I'm going to tell Eric Trump to make sure he tunes into it because I'm not crazy. And by the way, there are some people that will tell you like, oh, make sure you don't even have a TV in your bedroom. Now those days will never come in my house. That will never happen. I know like Giselle and Tom Brady had a whole no TV in the bedroom thing. Will never happen for us, but I'm just hopeful that maybe we could stop making fun of my eye mask because apparently I'm going to be better to live longer. According to this article, Landon will keep the eye mask on. The guys can make fun of us. It's okay. And other than that, I don't know a better way to end the show than talking about sleep. Let's all get a good night's sleep tonight because we've got an election to go win in 2024. Landon and Xavier, thank you both for joining us at The Right View. To everybody at home, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. We'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View.
And I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Nothing is worse than being on a phone call that drops. Nothing is worse than trying to text someone and you can't reach them because your phone is out of service range. And nothing is worse than supporting these major corporations and companies who don't support us. That is why I love Patriot Mobile. They are America's only Christian conservative wireless network. They use every cell tower out there available to all networks so that they have the greatest 4G and 5G coverage nationwide, and they support the causes that are important to us as conservatives. If you go today to patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump and use the promo code Trump, you will get free activation today. Again, that is patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump. The promo code is Trump for free activation so that you can get a great sell plan and feel good about doing it. My name is Lara Trump, and I think Mike Lindell is a patriot. He is someone who loves this country, is willing to fight for this country. If you go to mypillow.com today and use promo code Trump, again, promo code Trump, you will not only save money, but you will help us continue this show and other shows like it and help us continue the fight for the future of America.